Now, the second line of defense include fever, phagocytosis, and inflammation. And the mechanism of second line defense is also not specific. Now, fever is under the second line of defense that fights infections. During fever, the phagocytic activity will increase, and this will fight against the microorganisms that is infecting the body. Now let's look at phagocytosis. Phagocytosis, this is the name of the process. The phagocyte is actually a leukocyte that can carry out this process known as phagocytosis. And the phagocytes are neutrophils and monocytes. If you have forgotten these two leukocytes, you might need to go back to the previous chapter which we have mentioned about the leukocyte. So as I've mentioned just now, phagocytosis is the name of a process by which the microorganisms or other particles such as the dead cells are trapped and digested by the phagocytes. So when an infection occurs, the phagocytes will move to the infected area and they will enter the tissue fluid through the pores of the capillary wall. So when a phagocyte encounters with the pathogen, what will happen is that the phagocyte will eat up, engulf the pathogen, and the lysozyme, which is a type of enzyme in the phagocyte, will work to digest or to lyse the pathogen. Okay, so let's look at the picture. Now this is the one showing a phagocyte extending its pseudopodium to engulf the bacteria. Now this is the stage of the stages of phagocytosis. So you get to see that this is the pathogen, this is the bad bacterium, and that this is the phagocyte with the pseudopodium, right? It is surrounding the bacterium. So the bacterial ingestion forms the phagosome. Okay, after it ingested this bacterium, this is called phagosome. Now it is now bound in a compound like this. So this lysosome which is in the phagocyte itself will secrete this lysozyme, which is a type of enzyme, and then when this comes in contact with the phagosome, this is what we call the phagolysosome. Okay, so this phagosome combines with the lysosome, and there is this enzyme in the phagosome right now to act to destroy the bacterium by means of lysing it. We say it is now digesting this bad bacterium now, and this bacterium will be decomposed. And after that, this phagocyte will expel the remains of the digested microorganism out of the cell. And this is the stages of phagocytosis. Now the third means under the second line is the second line of defense is inflammation, okay, which is an immediate response that will destroy and neutralize harmful actions of microorganisms and toxins at the early stages of infection. And the inflamed area will swell, turn red, and there is pain. Now let's look at the response of inflammation as been described in this figure. So first, there is this damaged tissue that will release histamine. Okay, this is a protein that will stimulate an immediate inflammatory response. And this histamine will cause the blood capillary to expand so that more blood can flow to the infected area. Also, it increases the permeability of blood capillaries to the phagocytes. So the phagocytes together with the clotting factors will accumulate at the infected area. right? So this is the histamine and this is the phagocyte in action. So you get to see that. So the blood clotting mechanism is triggered because of these clotting factors and also the presence of platelet. And next is that the phagocytes itself will carry out phagocytosis, okay, the process which we have just discussed. Alright, so this will then stopped to destroy, this will then act to destroy the harmful actions of the microorganisms. Now this is the third line of defense. The third line of defense is by means of antibody. Okay, usually it is depicted by the letter Y. So you get to see these are the antigens and the antigen receptor site, which complements the antibody. So it is a specific reaction. Alright, so the third line of defense will be activated if the first and the second line of defense has, we say, fail to overcome the pathogens. To fight the pathogens, this is when the third line of defense will be activated. And that is through the actions of lymphocytes, which is a white blood cell, to produce antibodies. And there we say the actions of the antibodies are specific. Do you still remember the lymph nodes? The lymphocytes form in the lymph nodes. This is the one that will produce the antibodies. Lymph nodes is part of the organs under the lymphatic circulation, okay, the lymphatic system. So each type of antibody can only combine with a certain type of antigen. Like here, right? You see it is specific. So when a person is infected with pathogen, a large number of lymphocytes will accumulate in the lymph nodes to destroy the antigens and the foreign particles. And this will cause the lymph nodes to swell. Right? Have you ever experienced this? Swelling, especially at the neck region where there are lots of these lymph nodes. When you're having fever and you touch the area around your neck, you feel the swelling, and that is because there is large amount of lymphocytes there. The lymph nodes also contain macrophages. What is macrophages? Also, cells that is responsible to destroy bacteria, dead tissues, and also foreign particles by means of phagocytosis. And lymphocytes are divided into two types, namely the T lymphocytes and the B lymphocytes. The T lymphocyte acts on attacking the cells that are infected by the pathogens. And these T lymphocytes will then stimulate the B lymphocyte to produce memory cells. Memory cells, remember this. So if the same pathogen attacks, the memory cells will be stimulated to produce the antibodies immediately. Alright, so this is already the second subtopic